This is Francisco again. So sorry about that. I had some technical difficulties on my end. I will get the guys back on. Oh, here we are. Okay, so you guys are back on now. So I've got this back on. So can anybody hear me? Anybody there?
Yes. Yeah,
All right.
we all hear you.
All right. So this is it was pretty seamless for me to get on and off again. I'm already restarting. We're gonna keep going. It's already happening live right now. This is the beauty of live. It's
Oh,
TV streaming, whatever you want to call
where
it.
they're hearing me telling JD I know nothing about hockey, and then Cole Gay, I'm a Crest man anyway, because those are like the behind the scenes, the greatest hits that I need to profit off of.
So all right. So now we're back in, and yeah. So where were we? Where did we leave off? Not even sure anymore.
JD was educating us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here we go.
So so I'm not quite sure where I got cut off, but as for like 11 versus 12, so really the tournament expansion was motivated by two things. One is that there's actually a new conference of teams that have just moved up to the Division 1 / Division 2 level. Um that's about to get their auto bid. So the tournament would have had to expand anyway. But then also, of course, like after what happened with the basketball tournaments last year, where the inequities between those tournaments specifically were exposed, like the NCAA, of course, has been under fire as they usually are, but specifically for like the inequities in the two, like and
the
between
weight rooms, the food,
the women's and the men's counterparts in the same sports. So basically, the reason for 11 is that based on the fraction of 11 to, 42 currently women's teams versus 16 men's teams, or 16 spots in the men's tournament for 59 men's teams. Like, those percentages are the closest to being, like, exact. And so basically they're going by the malicious compliance. Like, we're going for, like, exact equality, but it's like, we don't necessarily want equality so much as we want equity. To me, it doesn't seem like 11 versus 12 makes that much of a difference, especially with these teams that are upcoming, like the league, like the new league in question currently has 6 teams. They're about to get a 7th next year alongside that auto bid. And then on the men's side of things, you have like additional teams either restarting their programs after initially cutting them, or like brand new programs. In fact, Lindenwood announced just today that they are indeed officially going Division 1 in men's hockey for next year. So within the next few years, like, you'll have 63. So it's like, so the number of teams is changing anyway. So to me, using it based on the percentage of how teams there are in current year doesn't seem to make much sense. Like 11 versus 12, I just don't get it. Like the only thing I can think of is if like they wanted to keep the number of at-larges consistent with the new HA getting an auto bid next year, but like if that's the actual reasoning, then just say that. I think that would have gone over better, because then people would have been like, well, okay, like at least that sort of makes sense. But they didn't, so now it's like, well, is the number of at-larges going to shrink by 1 next year, or are they going to add another tournament berth and just make it 12 like it should have been?
So I'm just posted up an article from SB Nation because I'm trying to understand that. Well, this has been something they've been calling for expanding the women's hockey tournament bracket, and they finally did it. But from the way that you are reacting, it seems like they didn't go. It made no sense to go with it this way, and then just kind of delay the inevitable of just evening out the tournament regardless. As far as I can see it from here, and they're giving out reasons why it's to
that's
reduce
basically
travel
what it
costs
is.
and things like that. But yeah,
Yeah, like the reasoning that they gave made no sense, and people have already been on the NCAA's case for years about how they do the bare minimum when it comes to the women's tournament, to the point where unlike with their men's counterparts, there were all basically like almost every first round match would end up being an intra-conference matchup most years because it would reduce the amount of travel. Like there was one year where like Northeastern and BC were matched up, even though like Northeastern was like the third or fourth overall seed, and like BC had barely squeaked in, and so they should have been sent out west to play like Minnesota or Wisconsin, whoever was number one that year. And so they're like, well, no, like let's put them together, but that way like we don't even have to worry about a bus because it's like basically a subway trip. And it's just like it's little things like that that have the women's hockey community like mad at the NCAA. And so then like yes, they finally expand the tournament, and then they do so in a way that makes everyone question, well, are you doing this just to be performative, or are you doing this because you realize now that you should have done it to begin with anyway? It's kind of a mess sometimes.
Okay. So the disparities between men's and women's leagues in the NCAA continue on, essentially.
Yes.
All right. So now we're on to the men's tournament. So,
but before we get to the main tournament, we need to go back in time a little bit. Back in time to March 19th. It is the final of the... Which conference is it? The CCHA, the Central Collegiate Hockey Association. It is between the Minnesota State University Mavericks and the Bemidji State University Beavers. I could tell you what happened, but I'm going to let JD here explain because he's going to be able to say it so much better than I could.
Yep. All right. So I think a little bit of background is needed on how the NCAA tournament itself works to fully grasp what was at stake here, because it wasn't, of course, just Minnesota State or Bemidji involved in the fallout from this. So, like other NCAA tournaments, like the conference champions like get automatic bids of it, and there's like a number of at-larges. Now, unlike what you might be used to with the basketball tournament, where it's like, yeah, like there's metrics that the committee might consider, but ultimately they can do whatever they feel like. With the hockey tournament, the teams are basically selected by something that's called what's called the pairwise comparison, which is like you take each team, you compare it with the other 58, and then you compare it based on their rating percentage index, whether they've played head to head, and whether they like their records against common opponent, like any opponents that they have in common. And based on how those comparisons work out, like you either win the comparison or lose the comparison, and then you're ranked in order of how many of those comparisons you win. Short version, it ultimately gets dominated by RPI anyway, but that's beside the point. So going into the weekend, you had UMass Lowell, Northeastern, and Ohio State sitting on the bubble, who were knocked out of their conference tournaments, but could still get in if certain results went their way. One of which was that Minnesota State Bemidji State game, because Minnesota State was in the top 4 overall in the pairwise, whereas Bemidji was down near 30. So if Minnesota State is locked into the tournament regardless, Bemidji State needs to win and get in. And so like as night's going on, like teams are watching the results. Well, UMass beats UConn in the Hockey East tournament, so that secures Lowell's spot. Harvard ends up upsetting Quinnipiac in overtime of the ECAC tournament. That knocks out Ohio State. But by this point, Minnesota State had scored what appeared to be the game-winning goal in the CCHA tournament. And so Northeastern thinks they're safe because 2 teams that would have been in anyway won their conference tournament championships. Here's where things get dicey. So basically CCHA game goes to overtime. Minnesota State scores what appears to be the game-winning goal. Officials review it, uphold the ruling on the ice of a good goal. And so, like, the officials end up leaving the ice. They actually end up leaving the building entirely.
Oh my god! I'm watching the replay. Sorry.
They hand out the trophy. Yeah, they hand out the trophy, and like they're like handing out like the like MOP award for the tournament and so on. And so like Minnesota State's celebrating. Bemidji has vacated the ice and into the locker room. And by the way, like these are actually relevant details to what I'm about to explain. And so like, and then of course like the crowd starts to file out after the celebration. So like, for all intents and purposes, the game has been rolled over. Everyone assumes it's over. Mankato retires to their, or Minnesota State retires to their locker room with Mason Cup in hand. But the ultimate problem was that it turns out the goal should not have counted. What happens next is that as all these celebrations are going on, like as the officials have vacated the ice, which again is a key point here, basically the healthy scratches, or like player like who hadn't dressed for the game for Bemidji, sees like social media blowing up about how well the goal didn't count, like what were the refs looking at, like did they look at it, etc. So they take it to their coach and be like, well, look, what actually happened was that as the Bemidji goalie was trying to make the save, they had started to remove the goal from the moorings. That in itself would not have prevented the goal from counting, except for the fact that the puck, as a result, was able to slide in under the goal cage instead of going in through where the goal mouth.
So
the goal,
JD, if you let me just explain this part right here. So I've got the the video version of this podcast. I've got the video up right now, and I'm watching the replay. So what happens is, the skater is shooting the puck towards the net, and the goalie is trying to make a sprawling save, trying to cover the near side of the net on his end. And when he's doing that, he's moving the goal. And it just nudges up and down just a bit. You can see it kind of tilt forward just a tiny bit. And the shooter gets that puck to slide in underneath the goal, but not through the goal line, but actually outside of the net, threw it on the outside in. It was pretty close to, I guess that's that end where the mooring is. But if you look at it like on fast speed, you wouldn't have guessed that it went through there. But like when you see it in slow motion, it's like, oh God, oh no, oh God, no. And yeah, like you said, you know, goals can count when they're lifted from the moorings, but they have to get through the actual goal mouth and the goal line, not from the outside going in. So that's what I have here.
Yeah, like the intent. Yeah, like the intent is to prevent the defense from being able to benefit from knocking the goal off the moorings, but not for the offense to be able to then magically score goals that shouldn't be possible. Like just from a physics standpoint. So, but then ultimately the issue was that it was reviewed initially and it still counted. Well, then so one of two things happened, the second of which was ultimately what the league would later claim. Either the officials just didn't realize what had happened because they weren't looking for it. They were just looking to see whether, I don't know, whether the goalie had somehow tried to interfere with things or whatnot, and whether it should have been awarded goal regardless. Or they just didn't have that replay angle in particular. So here's the problem. This gets brought by the Bemidji players to their coach, who then brings it to Don Lucia, the commissioner of the CCHA. Well, and this is well after the refs had left the building. Everyone else had basically cleared the ice and was in the process of leaving. And Lucia ultimately has the director of officials re-review the goal based on the new angles that officials on the ice didn't have access to, and decides, well, you know what? This shouldn't have been a goal. Therefore, like we need to resume the game because it's not actually over. But the issue with that is that at least one NCAA rule, and by which I mean from the actual ice hockey rules of the game, not the Division I manual. At least one rule was definitely broken here. As many as 4 were. The rules in question are 31-1, appointment of officials, which state that the on-ice officials shall be the referees and linesmen, and the off-ice officials shall be timekeeper, scorer, 2 goal judges, and a video system replay official. None of which are Don Lucia. So he has no authority to order the game to restart under any circumstances. Another rule, I need to scroll down because I want to get the exact text here. Where is 82.1, game intermission timing, which states in part that officials' duties and powers continue during intermissions and until all players have left the ice and entered the dressing room at the conclusion of the game. So the players had exited the ice, so the officials had no more say. There's Rule 88, which states that protests are not recognized or allowed, which arguably the Bemidji players were doing just that. And then from the replay rules, 93.6, allowable time for review, explicitly states, and this was in a memo that went out to all conferences earlier this year, according to other reporting, that video review must be initiated and reviewed prior to officials exiting the ice for the end of a period. Now remember, the officials hadn't just left the ice, they had left the building. So by rule, the game was over despite the bad goal. And so basically all hell breaks loose because, again, remember, Northeastern sitting there thinking that they're in because Minnesota State had won, meaning there was no bid fee filed at CCHA. But then, because of this ruling, which is in contravention to, at minimum, Rule 93.6, if not the others I mentioned, Bemidji could have potentially won, earned a spot via auto bid, and bumped out a team that wasn't even involved in the game from the tournament. And so you had a lot of people arguing either way on Twitter, and a lot of it comes down to Eastern hockey fans versus Western hockey fans for the most part, because Don Lucia is a fairly beloved figure in the Western hockey community, something which is very apparent from the hagiography that Flow Hockey, who is the CCHA's media partner, wrote in their recap of the game, where they were like talking about how the Northeastern Hockey Vlog was spewing about how this was wrong, despite this article itself noting the same italics from the NCAA rulebook that Rule 93.6 says that this review should not have counted. And then it follows on by saying, well, the boys at Boston were fuming. The men in Mankato were pretty calm, all things considered. And basically just talking about how justice was able to be served. Now, I think you three of all people know the difference between like what's legal and what's right, and like the difference between law and justice. But you also need to have the context here that this is a goddamn hockey game. Like, no one is dying as a result of not following the rules.
I love how
why, and as well-intentioned as violating the protocol might have been, you're now opening a can of worms for admins to go back in after the fact and manipulate results all over the place. And a lot of people don't like that possibility being opened as a result of what happened here.
I mean, people are like, I don't know. It's funny how the extreme comparisons they're putting it. They're putting it in comparison to the goal in the crease call from the '99 Stanley Cup final. Like they're putting it in that era of. I'm like, all right, guys, calm down. I'm reading this article. I'm like, whoa, guys, pump the brakes, pump the brakes real quick, guys. Come on now. But in the end, like, Northeastern still won.
Yeah, and it's. Like Northeastern still got in because ultimately exactly, what happened was 60, because like they finally resumed the game 60 minutes after it ended. And then Minnesota State ended up winning anyway on a goal that there was no doubt on 2 minutes into the restarted overtime.
Honestly, this is
so
not
ultimately.
I'm looking. This is not the craziest thing that has
sorry.
happened in hockey with regards to tournaments. Heck, was it? I forgot. I think it was the Stanley Cup Finals between Edmonton and Boston, where I think their lights went out and they basically had to end the game in a tie and had to have another game to start. So weird stuff happens in hockey, guys. It's fun. It's a funny Canadian game, and Canadians like to put funny Canadian rules. So weird stuff happens. That's why we have goaltenders who are just regular dudes being emergency backups and all kinds of weird stuff. So this isn't exactly the craziest thing to ever happen in hockey, but at the same time, it's like it's to be expected. Expect the unexpected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, it would have sucked for the game to end on an officiating error. But that happens all the goddamn time in sports. Like, there's the pitcher, Detroit Tigers pitcher, whose name is
Armando Galarraga.
Perfect game because the umps Yes, thank you. Because the umps screwed up on what would have been the 27th out. At the time, there were people saying, well, then Commissioner Bud Selig should have stepped in and then ruled that no, because it was in fact an out. Like, it should have just ended on what would have been out 27 in the first, would have been the original out 27 in the first place, because it wouldn't have ultimately impacted the result of the game. But that wasn't the case because I think ultimately we accept that, yeah, officials screw up, and there are cases where you want to go back and be like, well, they should like either like change the result or like do the replay or whatever. But the last thing you want is for administrators to then be able to go back and be like, oh, well, this ticky-tack call shouldn't have counted because of X reasons, so we're going to void the result of the game or blah, 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 or whatever. Because like you don't want a system where people can go back and try to favor, well, particular teams or their league. Because while I'm not accusing Don Lucia in particular of doing this, like, his league could have easily benefited from restarting the game inappropriately, because if Bemidji wins, well, then that's a third bid for the conference that they wouldn't otherwise have had, instead of the two teams that they got in that they did. And so, like, you have all these knock-on effects that impact teams that are not even involved in the game itself, and so ultimately you have to decide, when is the game over? And just accept that, yeah, these guys screwed up, either reprimand them or like fire them or whatever, or if there's like a rule that's stupid, then change said rule.
And honestly, I'm
in the off season, or
I've
clarify them.
I've relooked at the replay, and even with slow motion and just like glancing at it, I'm like, I would have probably made that mistake. Oh, it looks like a good goal. Like it's so. The angle that they have for that camera, and mind you, this is a college hockey tournament, and they're not going to have the same angles that they got in the NHL during the Stanley Cup Finals. They're not going to have like 40 different cameras inside of the net and outside of the net to capture that. But even given the angle that they have, which is the best one is the one above the net behind the goalie, you look at it in real time and you're like, okay, that looks like a good goal. You slow it down a bit, and it still kind of looks like a good goal. Only when you actually see the angle and of the puck and where it's going through, and that's when you start to think, I'm not a geometry expert, but that doesn't seem like it's physically possible. So that's and I feel like it's an honest mistake by whoever reviewed that play and considered that a good goal. So, I don't know. It's just making... I feel like it's an honest mistake, to be honest. I don't think it's as grand as the aforementioned Jim Joyce call with the Detroit Tigers pitcher. I feel like I would have made that mistake myself, just looking at it right there and then.
Yep.
All right. So...
Yep.
All right, so now we do have an actual...
And I think one more aside is that related... Oh. Well...
Sorry, we're in a bit of a delay
the actual
here,
tournament,
JD.
but,
Yeah, so sorry about that. It's like 5-6 seconds delay. So
but yeah, like this
JD,
ultimately
we
does
have a delay.
segue into the actual. Yeah, so like this ultimately does segue into the actual tournament discussion. But like, if you want to go back and like try to adjudicate, like the results after the fact, well, then you have the issue where Michigan canceled the game on Western Michigan back in December, citing bullshit health and safety reasons when they clearly had enough players to play. And that ultimately, the not playing that game may have given Michigan the number 1 overall seed over Minnesota State. Someone actually went back and they're like, okay, well, what would have happened had Western Michigan won? Well, then Minnesota State would be 1, Michigan would be 2. There's some reshuffling downfield, but like the same teams get in, but it could have impacted the matchups that ultimately got assigned. Although, amusingly enough, Western Michigan is 3 either way, so they of all the teams, they're the only ones that aren't impacted by Michigan canceling on them. But anyway, so basically at a certain point you have to say enough is enough, and like the result is the result, and it's too bad if like a mistake happened, because you could go back to any of these games, flip a result, and wind up with sometimes drastic, sometimes not outcomes.
All right, so I've got the bracket up right now. We've got one game is actually happening at the moment. So we got North Dakota versus Notre Dame happening right now. They're in the third period over on ESPNU. A game that already happened already. Minnesota State beat Harvard, so they moved on to the next round, to the quarterfinals. And then we've got the rest of the bracket. So we got Western Michigan facing off against the aforementioned Northeastern. So that'll be happening tomorrow, followed by we got Minnesota versus UMass, which is happening tomorrow as well. And then later on today, we've already had Minnesota Duluth beat out Michigan Tech, and they've moved on to the next round. And later on today, we've got Denver versus UMass Lowell. And then tomorrow, we have Michigan versus American International, and then Quinnipiac versus St. Cloud State. And that's the rest of the tournament going on from here on out.
Do you have any predictions, comments, concerns, feelings, what have you?
So like I was sick earlier today, or sick the last few days, so I actually missed much of today's earlier games. And fun fact, speaking of tournament format changes, this is actually the first year where there's an off day between the first round and the quarterfinals in each region. So that explains why there have been games already played, because normally the tournament would have started tomorrow afternoon, but now it's like you have game Thursday, Saturday in one regional, or one pair of regionals, and then Friday, Sunday in another. And so ESPN's like, oh, well, if there's only 4 games in a day anyway, we're just going to run it as a quadruple header. So basically the Thursday, Friday, when no one's watching, you have games starting at noon.
That's weird.
But from what I gathered from the chat in the College Hockey Discord, Minnesota State almost blew it because they were in control of it. Harvard basically scored 2 or 3 goals of an extra attacker and were like very, very close to actually getting an equalizer right before the final horn. So I would have, if I'm a Mavericks fan, I am very concerned right now, especially since the team that will be facing will either be North Dakota, who were co-regular season champions in the NCHC and a perennial power, or they'll play Notre Dame, who actually swept Michigan in the regular season. So I think whoever that was currently level. I think North Dakota would ultimately be the favorite to come out of that region. Going over to the West, I honestly don't know. Like, I would have put my money on Denver, but then they kind of stumbled in the Frozen Face-Off, and I'm pretty sure that they were, they lost to Duluth last weekend. So I think Minnesota Duluth might actually be the favorite there. Like, I don't really have much faith in UMass will be getting past Denver to begin with, especially since that regional is in Colorado. So Denver has the built-in altitude advantage. Excuse me. And then going to the other regionals. I don't know. I think I would favor Minnesota maybe coming out of that Worcester regional. I mean, Western Michigan has had a far better of an expected season, but they've also kind of been a bit inconsistent at times. I think they beat Northeastern, but I wouldn't bet on them getting past whichever Minnesota or Massachusetts wins that other first round game. And of Minnesota and Massachusetts, UMass's problem is that they have a above average goalie, but they don't really have like great goaltending. And so if Minnesota can overwhelm the UMass defense, I think the Gophers would take that one for sure. And then with that remaining regional, I mean, Michigan, I think, is a prohibitive favorite to win the entire tournament just because of how much talent that they have. But they've also been so inconsistent all season. I would have written them off as the first round exit, except they got matched up with American International, who, while they're capable of giving top teams fits and have actually had a string of upsets recently in the NCAA tournament, I don't know that they would be able to realistically get much offense going against Michigan, and so I think that would be the difference there. Quinnipiac, I think, is overseeded just by weakness of how the ratings percentage index works, because the ECAC has just been uncharacteristically weak this year due to 2/3 of the conference not playing last year due to shutting down over COVID. And that's the league where all the Ivy hockey schools play. And then you also had RPI and Union, who are basically wannabe Ivies, and so ended up following their lead. And so those teams ended up losing a lot to transfers. And so while Quinnipiac is a solid team, I don't know that they really should be a 2 seed. And so I think St. Cloud will end up winning that one. And then of St. Cloud and Michigan, I don't know. I mean, Michigan, of course, could be anyone on a good day, but I think they're due for another off day. And so I don't think they get out of the region. Like, I have seen this too many times with my own team at BU before, where it's like you've got this like very top heavy, very talented team that gets run over in the actual NCAA tournament by teams who have actual experience because they're not replacing everyone every year. So that's my take on that. I think overall, I mean, I didn't actually submit a bracket ahead of time, but I don't know. I think Minnesota would actually be my pick to win the whole thing. But we'll see. I'm usually wrong on these things because, one, anything can happen in a single elimination tournament. And two, like, just how the teams end up matching based on the pairwise can lead to some very interesting matchups. But yeah, I think that... But yeah, with Minnesota, I think they should get out of their region because I think they have a fairly weak 1 seed. And then basically I would pick them over North Dakota or Notre Dame. So it really depends on who they end up meeting on the other side of the bracket. If it ends up being Michigan after all, then there was last weekend where Minnesota got pantsed at home in the Big Ten tournament championship. But I think overall this season, I believe they ended up splitting the regular season series. So on neutral ice, I would still favor Minnesota.
Okay. Is there anything more, Andrew?
I think that's it. I mean, JD, is there anything else you wanted to mention?
No, I think the only other thing to mention is that, yeah, like the games through Saturday's regional finals are almost all on ESPNU. There's one game tomorrow in prime time that's on ESPN News instead. And then all of the other games from Sunday's regionals through the conclusion are on ESPN2. Though there's also a week off between the regionals and the Frozen Four, because of course, like, they don't want to have the Frozen Four and the men's and women's Final Fours in the same weekend. So the championship weekend isn't until April 7th and 9th.
Okay. Oh, and I guess before you go, this will help us segue into our next segment anyways, and we just want to know your opinion before you hop off. What's your favorite fast food or burger chain French fries? Which one's number one?
Why are we doing this to him?
Because Charles,
I don't want to hate nobody.
Exactly. You're the reason why I'm asking this.
Oh, well, I would honestly say McDonald's, even though I know that's like a very unpopular answer. But like,
You're a man of culture.
Just prefer like the thin cut fries and like the flavoring from their cooking process. I feel like most other fries are either too thick or too bland somehow.
Okay, see, something very important that we needed to know. That's all we wanted to know.
All right.
Okay, well, thanks for coming on the show, and of course, Andrew, thanks for having him on.
Thanks, JD. We appreciate it.
Hi, JD.
No worries. Take care.
You too.
Okay, this Discord thing is actually much easier than the Facebook thing. We pop in, pop out, things like that. I mean, I reconnected to you guys much faster than I normally did. So, the technical difficulties. My computer hasn't crashed again, so I don't know. It might have been the PS2 title that I put on in the background. Some emulation's still not 100% perfect, everybody. Sometimes things go wrong, and I'm over here trying to put on a great show and everything like that. But you know what? Let's transition into this, guys, because Charles is threatening to end friendships, and we have to talk about this. So,
I'm not trying to end friendships, but it goes back to my problem with humanity. We are gifted with intellect, and we are gifted with emotion, and sometimes our hearts choose what our heads tell us is wrong. And sometimes our brains choose what our heart tells us we shouldn't go with. And when it comes to a lot of food materials, I find there lots to be inner contradictions, inner hypocrisies. And then I also find out there's a lot of psychopaths out there that like foods done in a particular skill or fashion boys. And what I find is also some people also like to do the whole like, you could do this, but we'll do that. And they don't want to make a decision. I understand. It's your life, your call. Stand up or enjoy the fall. That's from Junip. Great band. Listen to them. But for every person who's like, oh, Nightmare Before Christmas is both a Christmas movie and a Halloween movie, I hate people like you. We got that Twitter feed. I'll lead into it to allow you to lead into it. We got the Twitter link of, was it I sent it or you sent it, Francisco? But what is the best fast food?
I retweeted it, so here we are. It's on the video version of the screen, but we're gonna put it's 9 different establishments that they've put up on the board here. Now we could go.
I've had 8 of the 9, so I can only comment on that. I cannot. Comment
all right, so we have, these are the contestants so far. We have Chick-fil-A, McDonald's, Arby's, Wendy's, Burger King, Five Guys, Steak and Shake, Whataburger, and Checkers/Rallies. All right. So, God, where do we? Who? Andrew.
I want to hear Andrew. Anytime it's food selection now, from now on, Andrew, him.
As you guys already know, I'm a psychopath. So.
Oh yeah, I'm expecting you to say Steak and Shake. I'm gonna stab you in the eye.
Let me see what the list is. I forgot what it was already.
It's on the screen. It's also on our Sports Goofs Twitter page. But once again, Chick-fil-A, McDonald's, Arby's. Okay. There we go. Okay, he's got it.
And Let me guess.
You got two options. Two options. I think 2 is fair, right, Francisco? Or do you want to do 3?
I can choose
Okay,
2.
okay. How about this? All right, how about this? Your number 1, your number 2 if you can't get your number 1, and the worst one on the list.
Yeah, okay, I'm definitely about this.
Okay. Well, I've never been to Whataburger, so I can't choose 8. I'm going to defer judgment there.
Yeah, okay. How many of us have actually been to Whataburger? I've been in a region that's had a Whataburger, but I haven't had it.
I
haven't been in a region that's had a Whataburger since I was 9 years old, and
Yeah.
I never went.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. So okay, so let's remove Whataburger. We have no opinion on it right now.
Okay. Now one other question: is this when it's at its best?
Oh my god, you knew exactly where my brain was going.
Is this when it's at its best, at its worst, or somewhere in the middle?
All right,
I mean, it's really going on your pleasantries because that's why it's going to be your top thing. So sometimes it might be at your best. That's my contingency when I speak. So you'll see why.
Okay, so I'm going to assume that these are fries at their best.
Yeah, and then there's going to be one that we pick that we hate.
Right. Goodness. I mean, Steak and Shake is probably the lowest on my list.
Well, Steak and Shake in general is as much as there's a
appeal is the diner aspect.
That and the fact that they have steak burgers, but the thing is they're also more expensive. And there's a video from Company Man on YouTube. If you watch his video, they're in the decline right now. So there's not as many of them around. I've had them, of course. They've got the shakes, which is their other thing, right? But they're not at the same, I guess, density across the country.
Do we have a uniform place that we can replace Whataburger with that does fries? That's not
it'd have to be it'd have to be a place that we've all been to. And you've got the...
We don't have to add in. I think there's a heavy selection, but if anybody's had White Castles, because I feel like a crinkle fry ought to be mentioned.
I've never been to White Castle. Let's just leave it. It.
Yeah, White Castle is a very much more northeastern type of thing, especially in New York.
Let's just leave it blank. So... Now, if you had asked me this question, I'm kind of working my way backward because I can definitely say what is my least favorite. If you had asked me,
least favorite, yeah.
If you had asked me 6 months ago, give or take, I would have absolutely said Wendy's without a doubt. But I'll give them props. They introduced a new fry, and it's actually not bad. It's not terrible. It's pretty good. It's not my favorite, but it's a lot better than the way it used to be. So that's why it's no longer my bottom. That's where Steak and Shake will go. Goodness. Holly. I think when they're at their best,
we're gonna have to add a clock now, like the draft. You're on the clock. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, do the Jeopardy thing, but and in this Jeopardy thing, you gotta make a decision.
You get 2 options, man.
Yeah, you get a 1A and a 1B.
I think my 1B would probably be Burger King.
Let him speak. Let him speak. Okay, so that's your 1B.
I don't see no chicken fries on that.
But those are chicken fingers.
Burger King has this good mix of amount of fry. You know, it's not too thin, not too thick, and they salt it up pretty well. It's a tough decision because I could, if I had three choices, I would put, well,
No, you get two, man. You can't.
I know,
Don't be that person.
I know. You know what? I'm going to change my 1B. I'm going to change my 1B.
Don't let peer pressure get you either. You be you.
Well, when you said "ugh," that's tough.
I'm contentious. Like, you're not going to agree with my stuff. It's okay.
Andrew, we knew what we were getting into when I brought up this conversation. Yeah. So, go ahead. Listen and watch again. I'm a psychopath, so we don't know what I'm picking.
Yeah.
Right? Whatever you pick. Oh, okay. Well.
Oh, I'm just gonna pull the trigger. I think my 1B is McDonald's. And my 1A is Chick-fil-A.
Okay. All right, so now so you picked your worst Steak and Shake and then your 1A and 1B. All right. Now who
I want to say this. My 1A and 1B are really freaking close, and I am willing to swap them depending on how I'm feeling that day. Because I had McDonald's recently, I have not had Chick-fil-A recently, so it's kind of like a flip flop. But yeah, that's my 1A 1B.
All right, who do you want me to go next, Charles, or do you want to leave yourself for? I don't know. How do you want to do this?
How do you think my personality is going to react?
I feel like if you know both of our opinions, your opinion will be a lot more demonstrative. So I'm going to go with mine. Okay, I feel I've got an opinion on pretty much everything here except for Whataburger because I haven't had it, and then you have like other fringe places like you got BurgerFi and Shake Shack and Zaxby's and things like that. So, but they're not on the list. And Zaxby's, you can make an argument is, I don't know, fast casual. I don't know. There's all kinds of things. But, so if I'm going to go with the worst one on this list here, the worst one, I can't even remember what Steak and Shake fries taste like. That's the thing. Like, and they look entirely super thin, right? They're probably the most thin of that's there. So, but I can't remember so I feel like I can't even make an opinion on them because I have no opinion on them because I don't remember anything about them. So I don't know if they're worse or if they're decent. So we're just gonna remove that from there. Checkers and Rallies, I don't mind the seasoning on it. You know, that's they got some type of seasoning there, and I mean it's all grease and it's all heart attack anyways. So if I had to go with consistency, and this is what I'm basing my opinion on, Charles, is consistency. Because you're talking about at its best. I'm talking about I can go to a place in Florida or a place in Wisconsin or a place out in Colorado, and this is what I'm going to get consistently across the board. Because there are some fast food places that it's like, oh, that's the good Burger King. Oh no, that's the bad Burger King, So I'm just gonna go with an average consistency here. And man, I do not like Burger King's fries. I don't from a consistency standpoint across the board. They made a good change. I don't know, way back in like 2002 or something like that to their fries, and I thought they tasted fantastic back then. But then they made a change to it, and whatever change they made to their fry formula, I feel like, for me, it's not really about the salt factor, to be honest. It's real about that potato consistency. And I feel like a lot of times when I eat a Burger King fry, it's not well done enough, where I'm tasting the potato that's a bit too raw in a sense to me. Like, I don't know. I feel I like a good crispy potato. I like a good, it doesn't have to be completely well done where it's burnt and all that stuff. I don't not like that. But, a little medium well cooking on that. And Burger King, feel like whatever machine that they use doesn't do it justice. It doesn't do a good job of it. So I'm going to have to go with Burger King at the bottom. Wendy's, I haven't tried the new fries as much, Andrew, from what you've said with the formula change, so I can't really base my opinion on it. And as far as my number one, guys, and this is gonna be a huge surprise because I keep trashing on this place, but I'm gonna go with Chick-fil-A. I'm going with Chick-fil-A with the fries. Their chicken is overrated, but the fries, I feel like I haven't had a bad one from them. McDonald's is fine. McDonald's is like the Mario of French fries. It's an all-arounder, right? Of course, you got to get to it before it turns into cardboard. But I would have to say, number one is Chick-fil-A. Five Guys, I like them, but I always feel like I'm gonna have a heart attack after I eat their fries. And then Arby's is almost a little bit of a lesser factor, the Five Guys factor, which is like I feel like I'm gonna have a heart attack afterwards. But they're fine fries. Arby's and because of the curliness, maybe it's the novelty of the curly fries, and it might be the thing with Chick-fil-A. But I feel like the way that maybe the waffle fries give me that crispiness and consistency and well cooked factor that I like. Because look, I'm not a guy who needs a ton of salt on my fries. You know, put it lightly. That's fine. I don't want to get all that sodium, all that water weight on me. You know, but yeah, Chick-fil-A surprisingly number one for me on this list. But their chicken sandwiches are overrated. All right. So, all right, Charles, here we go.
Excuse me, I'm just picking my jaw for a second. I'm not surprised by Andrew on his favorite. I'm surprised a little bit yours on your favorite. I knew you were going to trash Burger King. My worst, no debate, is Steak and Shake. Like, it's not good. They're piss poor shoestring fries. They have literally no flavor or taste to it. They're too thin to be potatoey. Every time I eat there, I get sick. They're not enjoyable restaurant. I don't like them. Don't sponsor us. I don't care. Don't call. Don't call. Plain and simple. 1A, 1B. Because we're talking about at its best. At its best, McDonald's fries, when they're hot and they're salty, when they're not trying to be healthy, when you want that either for 11 a.m. burger, and I don't eat the burgers at McDonald's. Really, the only time I eat McDonald's is when I'm hungry and I'm driving back and it's late and it's like 12 in the morning. If I'm coming, like when I got out of the Batman and it was like 11:30, I was dying and I was stuck in traffic. I got 2 McChickens and those fries, man. And yes, they turned dangerously terrible right after, but I think you can make the argument that all these fries turn dangerously terrible after some time has passed, because there's a rule of thumb when it comes to fries in fast food eating or fries in restaurant eating. Fries couple a bit first, bite burger, fries couple first, finish burger, eat the remainder of fries if you want to eat the remainder of fries. At its best, it goes to McDonald's. 1B, and this is why I'm kind of insulted. Well, what's your other pattern? I won't attack anyone's pattern of eating.
I'm just saying. I mean, you grab the fast food and you're eating the fries along the way when you're driving back home. You know,
that's also easy. Yeah. But that's always great. You know, like there's the fry tax with your family. If you had fries, mom, dad, uncle, aunt, whoever, you know, you gotta go for that. You with the boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, you gotta get the value meal, stuff like that. You hate yourself a little bit for McDonald's, and then you're never. Here's the thing of why you should love McDonald's fries. You're never more disappointed when they're not as salty as they should be, right? You ever got those like motherfuckers? You know, there's so